All right, so I'm going to point something out about the assault on children. And maybe we'll call this human vulnerability 392. It's not funny, just randomly. So, what is that phrase? Children say the damnedest things. And you see videos of, or you have your own experiences in life, where a child will say something, and you actually wonder how it could know. It blows the mind of the adult. It's like, not in a bad way. Children say the damnedest things. But in the spirit of that, one of the things that it reveals is that children have no filter. That grows with time, age, exposure to parents, society, school. You start developing these filters of what you will say, what's acceptable, what's not, right? So it's just a perfect illustration of, as I've pointed out in many videos that I've talked about, the childhood development is 3 stages of childhood development from birth to like age 21 or something like that. And the first one is from age 0 to 7. And the reason the human being is as programmable as it is it has no foundation of knowledge, number one. No beacon or foundation of truth. And they have no filter for the inward or outward flow of information. Meaning, you and I might have a conscious filter, so if they try to pump poison into our head, we're going to spit all that out and see what it is for what it is. Children don't do that because they don't have a filter. They don't have a foundation of knowledge. They don't have an understanding. They have no filters for the information going into their heads that makes it into the subconscious mind that starts increment by increment, little brick by little brick, building a foundation of how they will begin to see their perspective of the world because they don't have any filters. Well, in a similar way, but on the reverse of that, something about the human being as a child, until society, school, and all the parents do whatever we all do as any of those roles to, start creating filters, and they start to develop. They start to develop. So here's the point. And we'll just say usual suspects. In this respect, it's Jews. Because the area that I'm talking about of the assault on children is when you look at all the poisonous cartoons. And in the last how many decades, the absolute shit that's been dotted throughout as far as themes, agendas, homosexuality, LGBTQ, trans, fucking whatever the theme or narrative might be, when the enemy that has subverted your fucking culture and is actively working at a layer of our society, and you could reasonably call it that, because when you look at it from the lowest stuff on the ladder of they're putting out cartoons that are poisoning the minds of children that don't have any filters in or out. Parents aren't aware of this to the degree that they're not. Many parents are not aware of a lot of this very critically important stuff. Above that, you've got your cartoons for your teenagers, your anime, your video games. Those are long and complex. Children's minds and attention and focus get deeply entrained in these things the same way they do movies, kids' movies. Disney, notorious for placing poisons all through the cartoons, subliminal stuff, the word sex in smoke and penises in places where you wouldn't expect it. When you look, it's like, holy shit, there it is. Those little minds don't see it. So it adds to the poisons and toxins getting into the minds of children that I think helps to foundationally hypersexualize, direct and lean the mind towards whether they should be lesbian or gay in that respect, or whether they should be trans, or what is gender, or all of these fucking horrible poisonous toxins. The enemy of mankind, the Jews. And when you can trace all this back to them in these industries that are responsible for creating this stuff and then pumping it out through the television, which is, or now through the internet and social media. And when you start looking at where they're in control of all this, they're in control of all of it. The big reveal of who these fuckers are has started to reveal itself since Gaza, and now with Iran. Oh, that fucking, the lid has been torn off of that whole subject matter. And I would argue, I would guess, that there's orders of magnitude more people that you would never be able to speak such things to enlighten them to these truths, are now a lot more malleable in their perspective on who and what the fuck these Jews are. You can start attributing it to this, the children of Satan, the offspring of the evil one, however you'd want to put it. A substantial portion of the societal influence has been through the subversive mechanisms that the television, Hollywood, Disney, the internet, social media, the way they've gotten kids glued to their phones, or computers, or the internet, even with parental controls on. You've got people thinking this shit up that understand how the parental controls work. And when you're talking subliminals, when you're talking those subtle things that you may not even recognize unless you're really hypervigilant looking at it, child certainly isn't going to, because they have no filters. It goes in, and it creates foundations that parents aren't aware of. So as their kid grows and develops these desires to go in a certain direction, that their parents are like, what the fuck? Also, because of the way that influences children, and then children are very susceptible to social peers, their social groups, as their friends, influence of friends. So this shit starts to spread. Its normalcy starts with these young children while they're in school, sharing it amongst each other, because they all got it, all the other kids in the school, from the same mechanisms. And I would argue that most normal parents do not wire their children or lead their children down any of these poisonous and toxic ideological or sexual or whatever these things are that are the poisons that are being put into the heads. When you look at it from an enemy that's small going after an enemy that's big, going after the weaknesses and vulnerabilities, and they're so vile, deep, and evil that they'll go after children when they know parents are unsuspecting and actually assuming or presuming the people creating cartoons, anime, this, that, and the other thing, these things that are going into the children's minds while parents are doing whatever parents do. Kids need to have something to do. And the TV and this electronic shit and all this media that somebody else is responsible for fucking creating is going into the mind. It's like, at what point do children truly develop filters? I guess somewhere around 7, if they're early beginners, maybe 6 it starts, but it's early only in the basics. And maybe if they're late bloomers, maybe it starts around 7, 8, or later if there's other issues going on, if it even develops in them at all, meaning filters. The ability to recognize the poisons that go into the mind through every one of these mechanisms within this beast system is completely and wholly subverted. It is completely and totally controlled by the enemies of mankind, by the subversive force. And whatever that subversive force is, which is Jews, is obviously the enemy of the society that they've infiltrated and then began to subvert. They're in there subverting to be a cancer amongst the people, amongst the society, amongst the growing and developing generations. Come on, people. We need to recognize these vile fucking demons in flesh sacks for what the fuck they are. The seeds of Satan, the children of Cain, whatever the fuck label you can put on them. Now that the goddamn veil of these motherfuckers has been torn down and that taboo has gotten a lot thinner, you start doing the research on who the fuck these people are and who the fuck they have always been. And not just the Khazarians. Because the Khazarians entered the picture about 1,400 years ago. And isn't it strange humans have had issues and a history with Jews being these diabolical people all the way back to the days of Babylon, all the way back to the days of Egypt. Do your research. Look at history. All of a sudden you see a long train of behaviors that got them thrown out of Europe, European countries, over 1,000 times in a, I don't know what the span of time is, I forget. Could be like 300-400 years or maybe over 1,000 years, 1,000, I forget the time frame. But it's something that has been so well documented throughout history that all you have to do is go off the reservation yourself and do your own research, and you will quickly find the statistics that tell you this very group of people have been expelled from goddamn near every, if not every, European country and other countries around the fucking world multiple fucking times, and then they always come back. They get thrown out, 10, 20 years later they come back. They're always there biting at, nipping at the fucking heels of the society, of the culture, trying to get their fucking way back in. This is a group of people who have always functioned in the entirely opposite way that good human beings function. Their playbook of life, their rule book of life is quite literally, you could generally articulate this, the opposite, the anti. So that's why when you see this horrible shit, when you come to discover all the horrible shit going on, you wouldn't expect it. You don't think the world really has people that would operate like that. People who literally have positions of power and influence that know that there is no low that they won't stoop to. And when you start looking at the Epsteins and the Jimmy Saviles over in Europe, and the caliber of people, the level of operation of our fucking societies, from royalty to governments, political power, corporate billionaires, all the people, and all that, you know, the corporate billionaires and the religious layer, they're all lobbying and influencing governments who are making policies. And if you've got Jews more or less fully infiltrated to the point where they've got their fist well up the ass, basically every president we've had for a long time, for the entirety of my life, and I am 54 years old. So I would suspect that back in the 50s, 60s, 30s, people were a lot less aware of this, and the way World War II went, and the way the Germans were demonized, and the Jews went through this whole, how do you articulate, victim thing of the Holocaust, always failing to remember to point out that they were part of they were the Bolsheviks that went in and created the Russian Revolution, the Bolshevik Revolution, that, depending on the statistics you look at, killed 70 to 100 million Russians, 90 million Russians, and then there was the Holodomor, which was an additional 10 10 million Ukrainians? 8 million Ukrainians? A fucking lot. That was Jews doing that, responsible for that. And then communism goes over to China, and that was all Jews. Communism is all Jews. That's all Jews. Communism is a Jewish thing. It's a Jewish thing. It's a Jewish ideology created by Zionist Jews. It's all Jewish. That goes over to China, and then look what Mao did and slaughtered 40 to 60 million of his. So there were two genocides to such a massive degree, spurred and created more or less by Jews, but they're the ones saying, poor us, Holocaust, when, and then the whole narrative of Hitler wanted to exterminate them all is pushed, and that they were, and all the stuff that's pushed. You got these old fucking Jews that play the part with the tattoo and shit. And think about it. Hitler was responsible for sending a lot of the early Jews to Palestine. He began that process. When you start to research the actual history and realize that everything your society has given you has been a Jew-spun narrative about the poor victims of the poor Holocaust and the whole 9 yards. They've been fucking parasiting $35 billion a year, I think it is, or billion off of us. Look, the whole of fucking Israel is more or less built upon money from America. When you realize these people infiltrate the highest levels of the fucking markets, they created ABC and CBS in Hollywood. They created that shit. That's theirs. They built that shit or paid for it to be built, blah, blah, blah. But they own all the fucking markets. They own all the fucking exchanges. And like BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, all that. And when you look at the web of all of the corporations that are owned through that, they control banking, they control everything. And when you start looking at what's happening to our food industry, what they've done to our society, what they're doing to the Western world, it's like, people, you know, there are some of us that have been talking about these people for years. And it always fell upon deaf ears, because we were the ones that were intelligent enough to figure out who in the fuck these people were before the October 7th, and then what they subsequently did before fucking, you know, all this big reveal. And nobody wanted to listen because their minds were all programmed. Their belief systems were solidified just the way your Jew subverters wanted it. So those people then would turn on or shun, whatever version of that would happen, their own kind who pointed the finger at Jews. And then it became this whole thing where people were too stupid and programmed and unconscious and unaware and uneducated to actually understand who they were all through history, because nobody ever taught them, therefore they didn't know. And what was put into their head was nothing but the programming, this world, and the subverted society that we live in. The news has always been programming our minds with what government wants us, the version that government wants us. I hope that even if you're in your early 20s, this awareness is in your mind, that this is actually how it's always worked. And slowly but surely, various people throughout the last handful of decades have been waking up to it. Listen to those who came before us who were telling us, get a foundation of understanding, then start seeing it, then take our fucking knowledge and start trying to share it. And then just now that they've been literally, in all the most hideous ways, doing what's going on in Gaza, I mean, everybody's calling that genocide. The world begins to hate them because of that. And then somehow through that, they have both fists up the ass of Trump, because that motherfucker was on that Epstein train far too many times. They've probably got video of Trump doing unspeakable things. Yep, unspeakable things. Like the type of things that would make men want to tear you limb from fucking limb. Whether it's drawing and quartering them or physically tearing them apart. Because you realize the level of evil that's inside these people and what they're willing to do to kids. And these are the people running our fucking world. The video that I did in six and a half years ago over on BitChute, the most insane rant about whatever word I used, most intense rant about the psychopaths running our world. It was all about them. I knew the people that were doing the Epstein thing were the ones responsible for locking us down. All these people, it's a whole global fucking network that these Jews have been working to get so that they could take over the world after they compromised all the pyramid of power and all the people in it that they could corrupt. No, I'm sorry. All the people in it are corrupted. They've attracted the most corruptible among us into their fold. And then whether they were corrupted when they went in or not, get on the Lolita Express, go have some meetings with Jimmy Savile and so whatever the fuck, or however this is working itself out. Savile was doing what Epstein was doing over in Europe with royalty for longer than Epstein was doing what he was doing. When you start realizing who these men were and the fact that they were going after all of this within the European culture, all of them, if we could see one perspective, they were actually revealing to us who the most corrupted and most vile motherfuckers among us were. And it's a shame that that wasn't a system, because there was some where we were pulling them into it and then just turning them into fertilizer, but it doesn't work that way in this reality. So these people became part of the pyramid of power, and then they get compromised because they figured out that they're corruptible. You offer them money, power, pussy, children, and even worse, horrible things. All of a sudden, boom, you do this. How do you think they got the entire world locked down? 190 countries, 188 countries, however many countries of the total. I think there was 5 nations, countries that didn't lock down truly. That's the level of control and influence that they have. And when you realize what the corona thing was and the hoax that it truly was, all to put fear in people's minds, so that they would be so willing to take the shot, and look at what that did to people. You start looking at the players involved in that. At what point does the species that I'm a part of realize how far the proverbial fist up to its arm, or, hey, if you want to get crass, the Johnson of the goddamn devil's children is up the ass of specifically the Western world? Australia, America, Canada, Europe, come on, what the fuck? You start tracing back the devolution and degradation of all of our respective cultures, countries, societies, standards, morals, values, and the fact that all these people that are not us have been flooded into our motherfucking countries, and then they try to societally, through this over periods of time, program our fucking minds to accept these fucking people who don't think like us, act like us, behave like us. We don't want them in our respective countries because they're not Australian, they're not European, whatever country that is, they're not Canadian, they're not American. We don't want them here. Our governments are doing this to us because our governments are compromised, because they're all fucking evil, child-touching, blah, 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 blah. And that's just the way it is. Now, look at the assault on human children, the chemical lobotomy, the shots and vaccines that put people to sleep, or put them on a spectrum that takes them out of the fight. They're weakening men, dropping their testosterone, the chemical assault, because you have a smaller enemy that's played the strategies of the art of war incredibly well. In a sense, you've got to give them props as the diabolical evil bastards that they are. Because when you have no rules, basically, and there's no low that you won't stoop to, and you know you're dealing with people who largely will have moral boundaries, certain like that. It's crazy, meaning these Jews. But you can find that within all of our own respective races and cultures, and then they go after the most corruptible within our societies. There's always going to be that group of people who are morally bereft, damaged enough to not really have a moral compass. Their moral compass was shut off, that kind of shit, because of the horrors of the world and the shit that it does to humans mentally, emotionally, psychologically, which affects them spiritually. Oh, it's fucking crazy. Back to the assault on kids. Look, to the degree that you know and understand this, through what you've seen and taken in for yourself, that is age appropriate, more or less, to the various generations. where you see hypersexualization. All through the stuff for the 17 to like 23-year-olds or 22-year-olds, and then it's everywhere. Titties everywhere, hypersexualized women, not as many men, but you still see it. You still see certain aspects of it. This is all through the subversive, toxic poison the Jews, the enemy of mankind, and specifically the Western world, has been doing, and our own governments have allowed them to do it, because our own governments have been compromised, because they've all been evil and vile and corruptible. They've lacked moral compass. And think about it, like, this is some really serious, you really got to look where we are in the world, what's happening, who the people are, kind of shit. You got to do that. If you don't, you'll have no true idea of where the fuck we truly are in this world. You start looking at what they're doing in the Middle East and the impact that that can and probably will have across the whole world. Israel, and everybody knows what Israel is, and then they see America's military, America being Israel's bitch. I'm sorry, what do you think the rest of the world's going to assume? I don't think they think about the American people. But when you just look at the effect of what these fucking governments are doing, these people are over there swinging balls like they own the Middle East and like they have a right to tell fucking Iran what to do in any way, form, or fashion. I just like, holy shit. And who but the goddamn devil's children and the president, who they've got the fist up his ass, would go over there and fucking create that chaos that would stranglehold the Straits of Hormuz, which is this channel for all this fucking oil for all the rest of the world. So now that we've been over there, Israel's bitch, doing all that, that's going to cause ripple effects to all these other goddamn countries. This is all because they're going to hate us, have problems with us, probably try to hurt us back. And since we're going to hurt, I shouldn't say it that way, because they don't represent me. They don't fucking represent me. But since the American presence over there is going to cause the damage and hardship to civilian, normal people in all these countries that are going to be affected, to the degree that they decide they want to hurt Americans, it's going to be us that suffer because of this cocksucker and these fucking Jews. You see, people, if they could successfully subvert Europe, America, Canada, and the rest of the world, they can subvert the whole fucking world. They've been able to take control, more or less, of the most powerful government and military upon the fucking earth, the U.S. military, U.S. government, and used that goddamn government as a goddamn puppet and did whatever the fuck they want. They enriched themselves over in Israel, in Palestine. They fucking had a military built for them basically by us, or whatever. We gave them money, then they bought from us. I don't know how the fuck it worked, but effectively they got everything. They stole their nuclear technology from us. Blah, blah, blah. They're like the worst fucking parasite race upon the fucking earth. And they're always crying, oh, the Jews were always so persecuted. They're the goddamn devil's children. And until the world recognizes this and responds appropriately and accordingly, humans' history will always have the plague and the scourge of the motherfucking Jew. And that's a horrible fate, because they poison and toxify and shit on everything that is good, pure, wholesome, that represents goodness, health, growth, evolution, etc., etc. They're the most vile, caustic substance, but not as some natural thing or natural process. They're a vile race of fucking evil brood of vipers and the devil's children that plot and scheme. Like, there's words I've read and heard in the Bible that say some of this. You are of the devil's, you are the children, whatever, those devil's children, blah, 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 the children of Satan, seed of Satan. However that's best articulated, or all of it fucking applies, in whatever context you're looking at it. I will take in Ian Carroll stuff from time to time, and he's got a channel on YouTube where he did like 3 hours almost, I forget, maybe a little longer. I'd have to go back and look at it. I just watched it yesterday, and the things that he was saying about Jews, and his channel has a lot of subs and all this other shit, he was just telling the truth. And so am I. Just telling the truth. Have 680 subscribers. He's got 751,000. If a guy with that level of reach can talk about what he talked about and said the things that he said, which I agreed with basically everything the man said. I'm like, finally these younger motherfuckers are figuring it out, and he is articulating the stuff. I was like, oh my God, so many times through his live. I just like, oh my God, he gets it. Oh my God, he gets it. He gets it in a way that those of us that figured this shit out years ago get it. Like, he gets it. He did the research, or he's been educated by people who have, possibly both. I mean, yeah. So, the taboo has dropped. And even though these maggots control all of this stuff, somehow they're letting it fly for now. And see, here's the thing. I don't make any money on this channel. Never have. When I took donations, I was literally homeless, living in my truck. Couldn't find work. And once that stopped, I stopped asking for donations, because, except for some of my presentations, it's like, that's a lot of work. You want to fucking donate for the kind of work I did for doing that? Sure, I'd be happy to. But some of my monologues just ain't worth even putting that there. It's just like, that's some fucking dude and his opinion. No, it's not my opinion. It's my perspective, trying to teach people. But anyway, I'm digressing. The enemy of fucking mankind. And see, they represent the God of this world. That is Yahweh, El. I think they're all the same. I think it's big a game of names. I think Yahweh and El, Baal and Moloch, they're all brothers, families, cousins, related. They're all of the same ilk. This whole world is controlled by gods and entities of that ilk. And you've all just been given the story. But there's some daddy in the sky that loves you as his children. That's the story we've been given. So it must be true for those who believe it, and it must be true for those who want it to be true. Because they want it to be true. Without any actual evidence of it, without actually ever hearing from anything, and something as powerful and omnipotent and almighty as God certainly would have the ability to speak in a clear language to his children. I have to say that mockingly, but in that context. Ain't nobody heard any of that shit. And people that do claim that stuff are basically delusional. They're basically delusional, or trying to pass themselves off as some spiritual superior or spiritual leader, or they're closer to God than everybody else is. And then when you start to really, really analyze it, the God of this world is not a benevolent being. And it looks more like the demiurge, the archons, and that whole nine yards is more basically what controls this realm, this reality, to the degree that we know of. Alien influence, that's always negative. They always interface with the government. The government's corrupt. Look at what they're doing to the people. Look at what the governments have always done to their people. When you look at the American government as an example, Canadian government and European governments have done similar things, probably the Australian too, where they experiment on people and do shit that you would never expect. So if our governments are willing to do that to their own people, if there's alien influence or communication and anything like that, Roswell, you get alien tech, make an agreement, allow them to take humans to experiment on for whatever reason, genetic, whatever. And in return, they give us some antiquated, to them, technology that's really super cool for us. And you get this exchange. It's like, okay, so we're all fucked. The government, the whole world is corrupt. All the power on it's corrupt. There is no team light side, except where you're going to find good humans. Like the movie They Live, when depicts to you, the people that had the glasses could see that these vile demons were everywhere. And you could see they were in Hollywood, the news, government, all the positions of power. The people that were the They Live of that movie. That's what we're dealing with here, man. The whole world's controlled by these people, by these entities, beings. And then the lowly Jews, as they would call themselves or have you believe, that are not part of like governance. Believe you me, they're on that we're the chosen people train. And when it comes down to it, they're for them all the time. Fuck humanity. And when you look at the history of them never having a land and always roaming and all this stuff, they make that their excuse. But if there is a God out there that made it that way, that's their lot. And look at what they've done. And when you look at like what the name stealers were, how they played the game, then they adopted what the ones that they stole and killed. When you look into what that meant, what that was, and how long that happened, and how they infiltrated all through all kinds of places, it's deep. And for those who are just beginning to learn about this, understand that there's something that we didn't think they were. That rabbit hole is deep. There's lots to learn, lots of history to piece together and see the total tapestry, and it will probably shatter your current paradigm, if you currently have one, about who these people are and what they really represent. They are the devil's children in the truest sense of the word. See, here's a question I've had, and I've posed it to many people. In Revelations 2:9 and 3:9, it talks about those that claim to be Jews, that are not Jews, that are of the synagogue of Satan, that whole thing. Okay, so why does that make them different than the regular Jews? Because here's the thing, like I said before, we've had this history with Jews being these diabolical, evil, dastardly, Baal-worshipping motherfuckers since the days of Egypt. You see what I'm saying? The Khazars came in this picture 1400 years ago because the Jews were already a religion that was pretty goddamn dark and diabolical. So you had this other group come in, and then they've come together, and holy shit, you combine, I don't know, it's like two different tribes, and they all blend together and become one. If you got like, I don't know, Satan in that context, that's a Jewish creation. And then Baal, you know, they all get together and have a big family of fucking vile, evil demons or something. You know them by their deeds, by their fruit. When you start tracing the problems we have in the world, the societal problems, the social problems, the problems with LGBTQ, the problems with trans, the problems with all the poisons and toxins, the problems with feminism, the things that have eroded our culture, you trace the roots of all of it back, it's Jews. Gloria Steinem, feminism, and 3 or 4 other Jewish women pushed that feminist fucking ideology in the 60s, poisoned the minds of women back then, and then they poisoned their children and the generations. And they've done such a mind job on human beings, dumbing them down since the Rockefellers got a hold of the education system back in the early 1900s and took away the trivium and the quadrivium from general education. And when you understand what the trivium is, what the quadrivium is, and the fact that they willfully took that out so we would not be as educated as this population, as a society, and only educated with what they wanted to educate us to that would make us good fucking workers. Not educated fucking people. That, seriously, it's a fucking joke. It's a sick fucking joke what they've done. How they were able to do this to the entire world, to the entire country, to fucking rape and molest all of our fucking societies. You know, America, Canada, all of these countries, Europe, we have all this Jewish influence in our governments and our laws that are either close to Noahide laws or whatever the fuck it is. And it's like, wait a minute, what happened to our own countries and cultures? And how the fuck is it that we've allowed this to happen? What did they do? Some Kabbalic spell? Did they slowly weasel their way in with just an army of, small army of people that had money, resources, and were part of like these underground groups that trafficked and children and all that other stuff, and through slow but sure methodical manipulation, subversion, here, everywhere, finding the most corruptible, enticing them with money, power, pussy, children, whatever it took to corrupt these motherfuckers, well, to get them committed to fully being corrupted. Their souls were obviously already tainted, and they were easily influenceable for things like money, power, pussy, and children. That's crazy. That's fucking crazy to me. That's the nature of the species that we're a part of, apparently. Or is it not? It's all programmed into us according to our epigenetic environment and what happens to us. This programs us, and then as adults, if we're unconscious and nobody teaches us anything higher level, we largely act out unconsciously, but then it manifests in our reality based off the programming we got in our fucking heads. And if we're, if generation by generation, to the degree that they could get it done through these mechanisms of influence, social influence of the human mind, TV, Hollywood, blah, 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 all these things that we're consuming, entertainment, right? They're telling us the news, right? They're telling us the truth. Why would they lie? My grandfather's generation, when I was like 15, 14, I remember hearing him say, if Tom Brokaw said it, it must be true. He was one of those rigid motherfuckers. Everything he believed was the way it fucking is. And if you knew anything outside of what he believed to be true, couldn't be true, rigid. You know how many people are fucking like that? I think there's multiple things responsible for creating that in these fucking rigid-minded humans. I don't know if it's really the propensity of the human to be that, but something calcifies these people. It's crazy, and you never get through. You'll never get through. You'll never get through. Everybody seems to know, economically, the writing is definitely on the wall for the ripple effect. What's happening in the Strait of Hormuz, and there's the damage to oil. You almost can't blame Iran for fighting back in that way, but that's going to have a ripple effect. They intend it to. So the rest of the world becomes exposed to the scourge of the Jew, and hopefully they'll recognize, well, Americans need to recognize internally, we need a regime change. We need to throw the whole fucking thing out and start over. We really fucking do. And start from the principles that we initially had and be able to find the flaws in the system as they were subverted through history to get to where we are now and create something where that's not possible anymore, that can, when I say govern, I mean loosely, a free peoples, and effectively manage the affairs the way it was intended of the structure of the country, and that people were to cycle in, citizens were to cycle in and out. So no one person was imbued with power above all else for long periods, like kings and shit like that. It was never intended to be like that. I don't know if there's enough men with enough awareness, strength, balls, courage, knowledge. Maybe there is, and it just hasn't been the right trigger yet. That remains to be seen, but I'm telling you, if the trigger that I hope doesn't become the trigger is the amount of pain and suffering that we're going to experience because of the ripple effect. It basically, we're going to react to that rather than respond to what we logically see happening. You know what I'm saying? They're going to get us where people are so comfortable that they don't react or they don't respond to what they see and know logically. They're going to wait until they are forced to react to these things. And when they're uncomfortable and can't feed their kids or whatever it is, or there's more lockdowns or whatever, that's going to start to create chaos. And then as they've been in our societies pitting white against black, I mean, we're not natural fucking allies as it is. But considering we're supposed to have a society where we all, as Americans, get along and all this other shit, they've done so much to pit black against white. So even if there's this big thing where everything, we needed to have a regime change, you're going to have white and black probably going against each other. The dumb ones in that, not seeing the grander whole game, and the black ones that are stupid enough to not realize what's been done to their minds to make them hate whitey. And the same thing with, well, no, because a lot of the reasons why white people feel that way about black people isn't because of the color of their skin. It's strictly, I'll bet you in the 98th percentile, it's because of the way they fucking behave. It's their behavior. And if they behaved like normal people, I don't think we'd have too much of a problem with it. It is what it is. Anyway, I've digressed. But the truth of the matter is, they're here. Most of them don't even realize it. Because of the Jew. This book wasn't written for nothing. There's another, this is volume 2. I don't know why the camera fucking does that. So, and this was written, Volume 2. Look at who it was written by. The Nation. What the fuck? So, this software is so shitty that if it doesn't see me, it'll tune this out because it's looking for a human figure. But it's written by the Nation of Islam. So you got some pretty militant-minded, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, black folks, black people. They're like, fuck Whitey. He's been lying to us. Oh, that's what they thought. We're going to figure this shit out for ourselves. And these scholarly-minded men, black men, figured the truth out. So they wrote this a series, Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3 of the secret relationship between black. I had the blue version, which really tells an awful lot of good stuff in that version. And I gifted that to somebody. But they brought them here. And here's the problem for us Europeans. Jews have our skin tone. So the average African American that has not been made aware by one of their own, probably, that I was the Jew that was responsible for bringing them to America. Yeah. Yeah. Because when you look at European history, we enslaved our own. We, Europeans. Some Irish were slaves. Some Slavics were slaves. Then we had indentured servitude, where if you owed somebody debt, you were enslaved to them. Sometimes there was slavery for prison sentences and shit. So we were enslaving our own. We didn't generally venture off into faraway lands to go rustle up a bunch of primitive people. To us back then, they were primitive people. They still are to us. And the black folks here don't even recognize that whole dynamic of, if they weren't brought here and all that fucking shit happened, they'd still be over there in Africa dealing with what Africans are dealing with. Look at the culture over there. Look at the way they live. Look at what they do. But they're so hateful of whitey. As good as they fucking have it here, it's crazy. They put a black man in the presidency, and black people still want to hate whitey like we're the blue-eyed devils, and it's not us, it's the Jew. The Jew is the blue-eyed devil. He just has our skin tone. But the Jew doesn't think like us, doesn't operate like us, doesn't have the same soul as us, doesn't have the same spirit. They don't operate from the same places and spaces. They don't value the same things as good people. Anyway, I could go on, but I've said plenty here. Take it easy, everybody.